okay, so in general, this is just trying to try something out, try something new, right? And I'm trying to get creative with it, trying to have fun with it. I was thinking that maybe I can attempt to tell personal stories, not just the way that I have, like within the context of trying to have like a moral of the story and a message that I'm trying to teach, and then using my stories as examples, but actually trying to tell a story about my life and using the cards. The way I'm going to go about this is I'm going to start with a story that like just has a lot of confusion and mystery and things, uncertainties involved with it. And so I'm hoping that the cards will be able to help kind of guide and direct that, and that maybe I could even get some answers for things that I am unaware of when it comes to that. But ultimately, it's going to be an interesting way to tell a story, I suppose. I can sit here and tell stories about my life, and I likely will when it comes to like different, like my TMI series, which I just started and have not continued with yet. But yeah, I was just thinking that there's just like different things that I want to talk about and trying to figure out how to go about talking about them. And then I was like, oh, maybe I can try this because this has been fun for me lately. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm going to be attempting to do. Okay, so I have this story. I worked for a woman. I was on my way to the shelter because I was homeless at the time and didn't have anywhere else to go. And found this woman at a Walmart. My bus had been running late and her bus had been running late. And so we happened to meet each other. Her dog came up to me and was greeting me, and I hadn't seen my dog in a long time and had lost my other dog, so I was very excited that a dog just came up and started showing me affection, and I was like talking all sweet to it and stuff. And then I turned and noticed its owner, and I started talking to her, and she was talking about how she had been looking for a caregiver, and it was just hard to find good help. And I was like, conversating with her about it and stuff like that. And then I was like, I mean, maybe this is crazy, or maybe this is exactly what we both need. But like, I am a caregiver. That's one of my trade skills. And I'm currently looking for a place to live. So if what you're looking for is live-in caregivers, that kind of sounds ideal. And so she was like, yeah, don't go to the shelter. You might as well just come right to my house tonight, and then, you can start kind of seeing how everything goes and working and seeing what you're comfortable with, and we can go from there, and maybe it'll be something that works out. Hopefully it's something that works out. And then we ended up, we were like chatting. She had a friend with her too. So like we got caught up in conversation, they had some beers with them, and they were planning on having some beers that night. And so we were just like talking, chilling, making jokes and stuff like that, and missed the bus stop. So we ended up having to get off like 2 miles almost away from where she normally would get off of the bus, and walking through this park, like the back way through this park or whatever, and up the neighborhoods, and through the woods we went over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house, to Nanny's house. And it was like during that walk, there were different red flags that I didn't know as red flags at that time, right? Like her calling her grandson the N-word, but her grandson is like a little white boy, so like I kind of thought it was supposed to be like a joke. I didn't really take it serious. It kind of struck me as interesting. I don't really know what to think about it, to be honest, but at the same time I was like, well, maybe she's probably just trying to be cool, right? And like, you know, different stuff like that. She's talking about he had gotten involved in drugs and was kind of vague about everything. And I don't know, I guess just at the time too, like I really didn't know, like I didn't know her, so I didn't know how to place any of these things, right? Then we like stopped at the bridge to have a few beers because it was very, very beautiful out. It was just a really nice night, and we were like about halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way to the house. So we decided to stop to have beers. And she's like bragging about her son, telling me that she didn't know if he was actually with his ex-wife or not. She like was referring to him, like she referred to him as single, and she said that he had been married, but she didn't think that they were still married, and that like he was never with his wife, and she didn't really know what the state of their relationship was. She was making him seem single and available, and was talking about how he already had 3 kids that he's raised, and how he was potentially looking to date again because he wanted to have more kids. And then she's like showing me pictures of him, and she's like talking, like she's obviously trying to set me up with him, right? Like that's what she's talking about. And she's trying to like sweeten the deal of me potentially working with her by telling me about the son of hers, who was very attractive, by the way, all around. I mean, she was like talking about the wine that he had made, and like all this different stuff that he had built, and all the different fishing and hunting and stuff that he does, and how he raised the kids, and she made him sound very, very good, which wasn't terribly difficult in my opinion. But that was like, it's so weird to think about that in like considering like the way things went during the 6 months I worked for her, or however long that was. Something like that, 4 to 6 months, something like that. It was a wild time. And like as soon as her son shows up for the first time, he immediately starts talking about his wife. They live together. They are still very much married. So like at that point I was like, I see what's going on here. Like she just doesn't like his wife. And then she starts like talking about like, well, yeah, she was never a good mom, and like, you know, she's abusive to her son, and she just wants him to have a good woman, and but like ultimately like she was just trying to be very controlling. And she liked me. She called me an angel up until I stopped just taking whatever shit was being thrown at me and started like, I mean, I still did my work. I still did my job. I still worked for other people. I was, for a time, her only caregiver and was doing a good job, despite the fact that her grandson was coming over and destroying the absolute house and destroying my things and trying to abuse me and murder me and shit. It was insane. Still kept the house up, still made sure she was cared for, still made sure she never had to like shit her pants or anything like that. She's a quadriplegic. She required consistent care, right? She could do a lot of things. She's mostly a paraplegic, but like becoming a quadriplegic because she was losing like dexterity in her hands. But she could still do things with her hands, and she would try to do as much by herself as possible. But mostly I just let her direct whatever she wanted me to do, and I would just do those things for her. I don't have a problem being a servant. Like, that comes naturally to me, and it doesn't make me feel any type of way. I like serving people. I just don't like being disrespected for my service. Like, I do an extremely good job at what I do, so like, I expect to be appreciated for that at the bare minimum. And by appreciated, I mean just generally respected. I don't really ask for much. I'm starting to, because I'm aware of how extremely valuable what I have to offer is. But that's a different story. So this place was insane. This woman is off her rocker, and has been for as much as I can tell her entire life, because the way that she talked about herself even when she was young, that she talked about her relationships, and that she talked about things like, not that I can't relate, I myself tend to be a pretty unhinged individual myself, and meeting her family, like, I was just watching Talladega Nights the other night, and there's a part where, like, Ricky Bobby's kids are just, like Ricky Bobby's kids, his relationship with his wife and kids reminds me of this family dynamic, okay? Like, except that her grandsons, aside from the oldest, are, like, incredibly respectful and, like, have this, like, dignified way of carrying themselves, and, like, are extremely hardworking and very, like, resourceful. Her youngest grandson is incredible. Well, she also has 2 other grandsons from her other son that I never met. But the youngest grandson that I met is incredibly resourceful, incredibly creative, like, builds full-ass structures in the woods using just a machete and, like, rope and shit that he's found. Or not even, just, like, folding the wood into itself and stuff like that. Incredible. And her son, like, makes all of these different things himself that way too, like using, like hunt and use, like, deer antlers, or, like, use, like, turtle shells, or use, like all these different things, like woods and stones and stuff that he like to make, like, different types of tools. They're, like, beautiful cave people. I love the ingenuity. I was with a guy in Baltimore. That was all, that in of itself is a whole nother story. But I lived with this guy who was very much like that. He had been in the army, and he just had a knack for, like, he was like a naturalist kind of, and liked to make stuff out of nature, liked to be resourceful that sort of way. And I've always just had, like, a very big interest in those types of things, and I find it, like, incredibly attractive in an individual to be that resourceful, and, like, to be, like, a mountain man type that, like, can craft anything out of anything. That's, like, an ideal person in my mind, right? So, like, they have these qualities that I, like, hold a lot of respect for, and they also have these other qualities that, like, listen, I still have respect for her son and his family, to be honest, but, like, I lost so much respect for this woman having worked for her, because, like, and it was hard for me not to separate her from my own mom. She felt like my mom. People thought that I was her daughter. She kept calling me her daughter. She would call me her son's wife, which was wildly inappropriate. Not that I didn't want that to some degree, but, like, it wasn't appropriate. He had a wife. He has a wife. Like, that isn't me. And, like, the way that she just, like, controlled those things and stuff was just, like, literally insane. The delusional way she tends to treat people in general, like, is insane. And much like my mom, she has these, like, no, this woman is obviously dependent because she is disabled. But much like my mom, it's part of her just personality to be extremely codependent and thus controlling. And just like my mom, she also, like, struggled to work for herself, like, in a dignified fashion to make money in a way that's legal. And got very accustomed to making money illegally. And that became this whole other thing where I was like, I ain't trying to be involved in this shit. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing any of this. Meanwhile, even then, I just separated myself from those things. I would involve with myself with those things, but I continued to care for her and continued to care for her house, continued to care for her dog, continued to care for her family and her neighborhood, like, caring for everyone as much as possible. then, and okay, so we're gonna have to stop there because that's, okay. The way I have this set up, and I don't know why I set it up this way, but I have her in the middle, I have her son on the left, and I have her grandson on the right. And the thing was that, like, she initially was trying to set me up with her son, but then as soon as he showed up and was talking about his wife and was like, she had said different things to him about me and stuff like that, where she was, like, obviously trying to set us up and stuff, but he didn't give the impression that he was trying to be with me in any sort of way. So then she changed it over to me trying to be with her grandson and kept telling me, like, well, he's just never had a real woman, and, like, you should go in there and fuck him right now. Like, lady, that's insane. I have never once in my life, and my grandma was crude, my grandma was wildly inappropriate, and she would, like, she'd kind of be like that, but not exactly like that, like she'd hit on dudes for me, and, like, try to, like, say things and stuff like that, but, like, she wasn't literally anticipating that, like, these dudes would, like, take me right out back where she could, like, kind of see or hear what was going on, and then, like, do me the best I've ever been done, like, that's what she was saying to me, and it was, like, really, really crazy. It was so weird and so crazy. And I wasn't interested in her grandson. One, because he's young. He's much younger than me. Her son is older than me, but the difference is different. And it was far less predatory for me to be with her son than it would be for me to be with her grandson, right? But on top of that, like, her grandson's also off his rocker. Like, he's not in a healthy place, even when I first met him. And he's, like, going through a downward spiral. And, like, me having sex with him would only bring all of that toxicity out of me. It wasn't going to help him out of where he was already headed himself. And he was already headed there himself. The best I could offer was what I tried to offer, which was genuine friendship, and somebody who actually cared about him. Because it really didn't seem like, aside from his dad, who I feel like was trying to care for him, but was really struggling knowing how to do that in a healthy fashion. And from the impression that I got from hearing from others, like, his mom did not treat him well and was rather abusive, and, struggled to care for him too. And, like, his grandma's, like, caring for him by giving him a place to stay, but she's also, like, encouraging his drug use in these different ways and then holding against him, and then she's, like, triggering him about his legal issues on purpose just so that she could control him, and she's, like, controlling his work, his career, and, like, not letting him work anywhere else, or trying to defeat him into feeling like he couldn't work anywhere else because she needs him there, and, like, making him feel guilty for not taking care of her when he was not in a place to be taking care of her. This poor boy was so lost and so unloved, and that was heartbreaking to me. I had no interest in fucking this kid. I had every interest in loving him and trying to help him see his true value so that he could get himself into a better position, so that he could get himself into a better place, so that he wasn't just falling for all of the insane bullshit that was surrounding him and his family. And that was obviously, like, bred into him to some degree. And, like, obviously, I don't know all of their past. I don't know everything that these people have been through and stuff. I can only imagine how traumatic this poor boy's life had been. Like, I was really, like, and I was trying not to interfere. Like, I'm the caregiver. Like, it's not my place to, if I'm, like, being good at my job, like, it's not my place to, like, interfere with family matters. So for, like, several months, like, I kind of just doubled down with my friendship with him, or I would, like, try to just communicate things to him a certain way. But he kept just wanting to fuck me. And the more that I rejected him, the more, like, off his rocker he got. And he told me at one point, like, I've never been rejected by a woman. there's never been a woman that I pursued that wasn't willing to have sex with me. And it's like, okay, well, there's a first time for everything. You're going to have to get used to it. It'll help you grow as a person. And he did not like that. And then he made it like, you know, out like, well, who the fuck do you think you are? You think you're so great? Like, no, I don't. I just think I'm a human being that has the right to choose if I want to have sex with a person or not. It's not really that complicated, you know. And like half the people I've ever wanted to have sex with never wanted to have sex with me, and I didn't get to have sex with them. That's what rejection is like. Everybody goes through it. It's part of growing up. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. It was to him. It really, really messed with him. And like, then he'd be like, you know, if I wore a dress, he'd be like, so you're just gonna walk around dressed like that, expecting me not to feel some type of way, like you're just trying to tempt me. You're just here trying to tempt me. And I was like, I've already explained to you that I don't want anything to do with you sexually. I'm not trying to make you feel any way sexually. I'm not trying to have anything to do with you that way. I either want to be your friend or nothing at all. We're supposed to just be coworkers. Like, I don't. And then it got to the point where like, then it became like this weird competition between he and I, where like, and his grandma was like kind of egging that on to a degree. And then she'd be like, well, I need her more than I need you, just to hurt his feelings. And like, physically, when it came to her health, I'm a professional caregiver. I've literally done it for years. There was a weird discrepancy where I was able to offer her more professional care, knowing what it was that she needed. But at the same time, he felt personally offended by that, as well as I would have in his position, because that's her grandson, and he has been caring for her just as much as his dad had cared for her growing up. Like, his dad cared for his mom from the time he was 11, 12, like being her caregiver. And, you know, it's only as she's like continued to require more and more care that she's really needed to get people externally to care for her. But it's also been like, as she's learned how to manipulate the system, because there was several months that I worked for her that I was being told I would get paid when really she was getting paid for the work that I was doing. And then once I started working, I was working for her grandson, and she was getting paid for her grandson, and she was taking his paychecks. And it was only when I validated to her son, his father, when he had complained that that was the issue, and I let him know that he wasn't lying and he wasn't making that up, and she really was trying to control those things, that his father started to like look at things a little bit differently, and things got really fucked up really quick and really crazy. Really, really crazy. Okay. So first I'm going to turn these cards over to represent these people. Okay. Wow. Can you see this? No. Can you see that? Okay. The way I have hers, it's hard to see because it's going to drop off the table, but I have their representation face up and their clarifying cards face down. The cards I have for them, for her, is the Lovers in reverse. For her son, it's the Seven of Cups in reverse. It's making me feel a lot of ways. And for her grandson, it's the Sun in reverse. What I learned about this woman during the course of time that I worked for her, and I got to the point where like I would have left a lot sooner had it have just been about me, but I found myself caring very deeply for her family and for the community at large in which she existed, and for the people that she was taking advantage of. And I kind of made a personal responsibility out of that. And then when things started to get really, really crazy and I started to get pushed out, like because it started becoming very violent, yes, I was scared, but I was told at that point by Spirit to just wait on Spirit, and that I would be moved out of that position when I was called to be, and that until then I would be protected, and I just had to not fear, regardless of the fact that like I was literally actively being threatened to be murdered and people were trying to kill me. her grandson and another person specifically. The thing was that her son's involvement, when I found out a lot of the illegal things that she was doing, now I don't have a problem with what people do with their lives as long as it doesn't affect anybody else, okay? So like, and also as like, I have a problem with people hurting themselves, but it's not like a problem. Like, I just don't like to see it, and I want to help people that are in that position, right? I don't want people hurting themselves. But like, if somebody is doing something that isn't harming anybody else, doesn't seem to be harming them, and they're still doing everything that they're supposed to do, and it's just not something that's like socially acceptable or whatever, like, I don't give a fuck. That's on them. That's their thing. So like drug use. Okay, for example, if, you know, if somebody's doing a certain, that just made me start thinking about my mom, which like took me to another place. So I'm not going to think about that. If somebody's doing something, like, even if it's a hard drug, like, even if it's like meth or heroin or crack, and I'm like unaware, like I've known people, I had a coworker once that I found out had been on meth, fairly consistently, like they were an old regular user of it, and that they had kind of picked it up and started using it again. I hadn't noticed. I kind of noticed that they were going through a hard time in their life. I noticed that they were suppressing a depressive episode, that their mental health wasn't the greatest, but at the same time I noticed that they were actively doing whatever they could to like not have that affect them. I've been in that place. I wasn't using drugs in that place outside of pot, but like there was a time that I was drinking for that too, and I consider drinking just as bad as any other hard drug. So like, just because it's more easily accessible doesn't mean that it's not just as terribly damaging. And like, if it doesn't appear to be damaging, like, who am I to say? There's plenty of things that I do that aren't great for me, but they're also not terrible for me. And like, that's for the individual, you know what I mean? And I believe in people's freedoms. So like, if somebody's doing something, you know, I feel like crack's probably harder to hide. I've never done it, but the people that I know that have done it, like, you can kind of tell when they're on it, especially because they like start to like not care about, like, they'll just like tell you that they're on it, like, and they'll just talk about it all the time, and they'll be looking for it all the time and stuff. Where like, I've known plenty of people that have been really hard on coke, and like, they keep it a secret and you wouldn't know. Plenty of people that are like secret alcoholics, and where like, you might see them partying and drinking that way or getting drunk that way, and like, you might even see them getting drunk like kind of regularly, but like, you don't still see like the full state of it. You know, and again, I just try not to judge those things, but like, certain things like that, like, but if what you're doing is like harming children or other people that are incapable of caring for themselves, or if you're like exploiting systems that people need to survive, or if you're like manipulating systems to gain benefit at others' expenses, I'm not down for that. I'm really not. And if I found out that those things are going on and I'm in any position to like stop them, I'm gonna want to. This particular situation was very hard for me because in other positions in my life I have been able to step up, and in this one I didn't feel like I could, because I felt like by the time I realized how deep everything was and how much I really wanted to like see some sort of justice, I was too far in it and was scared. Like, I wasn't involved in anything that I needed to be guilty about or scared of legally myself. I was scared for my life. I was scared that if I got anybody outside of the situation involved, that there would be this slow legislative process where like the cops are gonna come and like talk to these people and be like, well, we got an anonymous tip of what was going on directly inside of the house. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because so many of our legislators are fucking stupid. And on top of that, it's not even that. It's like the way that the law works when it comes to these things like these. You're thinking in the mind of justice, not in the mind of a criminal, and these people are criminals. So like, they're already 10 steps ahead of you when it comes to those things. Plus, like, what I found was that these people were like that. She was able to pay off the courts and the cops somehow in order to like keep things afloat and in order to like keep her family out of trouble. And I imagine that this is kind of something that's been passed down in the family, because that's when I started to understand the level of Nazi ideologies that they were actively practicing. And like these things weren't just jokes, like these things were like, they took these things seriously. And it really just started to throw me for a loop, because I realized, like I did with my family, that like sometimes people are just aloof and they really like, they make jokes about these things and like, it's because they don't understand them. But sometimes people are actively involved in some seriously shady shit and they make light of it in order for people to like to go over people's heads. And like, only because I've really been through people that have really been up to some seriously shady shit and like watched it go down and know that people are capable of those things, was I like, hold the fuck on. Like, so when it came to her son's involvement, he played two different people. He played a different person to my face than he was playing behind the scenes. But the impression, and I knew that all along, and I think that I, truly, like, and I got the impression even right off the bat that he was playing on my empathy in this way. But at the same time, like, it was very hard for me not to empathize this way, because what I saw was like a child inside of that man that like had been preyed on since he was actually a child, and had been manipulated and coerced and lied to and trained to be a certain way, and who had in their hearts never truly like identified with a lot of those things, and had to overcompensate in a lot of ways in order to validate themselves, so that they were never, that mask was never removed, so they were never found out truly. And I saw his mom as being someone incapable of being able to read that true person, because it was the same way that she like thought that I was like pure and innocent and stupid when she first met me, and that she could get away with all those things without me knowing, because that's what she thought. Where it's like, well, if you're this deep involved in certain occult practices or certain witchcraft or certain like dark arts, like certain very wicked things, but that blind, like, yeah, you're fully invested. Like, you're fucking off your rocker. And because of that, like, I think that nobody would know that more than her son. I don't think anybody knows her more than her son does, I think, in the world. There's never been anybody that knows her better than her son. And I think that there's an extreme level of guilt that comes with that. Quite similarly to my relationship with my own mom. But I also saw it as like my brother, who has been just like parasited from my mom since before he was even born. And I saw that same thing with her son. Hold on. I don't know if I can. Okay, let me. It says that my storage is going to run out, and it's because I forgot to delete the prior video. I want to pause it and see if I can delete it, but I wonder if it's going to stop it. If it does, I might just have to start a second video. We'll see.